Imagine a very different kind of dungeon. Not really a dungeon, but actually an ancient overgrown garden. Welcome to my channel. I focus on tabletop role-playing games, video games, and science fiction. Your party hears of a patron who is in desperate need of a powerful party to go out and acquire something. What he needs the party to do is they have to acquire a flask of a very special liquid. It's from a fountain that is reputed to give relief to those suffering an obscure curse. So let's see what kind of adventure this would be. Eons ago, a millennia ago, there was a great warrior, a fighter, who built a massive castle. And over the years, the castle, the great warrior finally passed, and the castle fell into disrepute and then into ruin. But it left a massive ruin, and the grounds around the castle grew up with a variety of plants, and there was a lot of animal life and so on. A druid just reaching the level of archdruid, a couple of thousand years, a couple of centuries have passed. He sees or hears about this ancient ruined space that this warrior had built this massive castle. He goes and sees the ruins of the gardens and the area around that, and he just decides to build his keep there. So he builds a massive garden with fountains and various things. He realizes that the warrior had dug deep and built dungeons and had tapped into some of the deep waters under the hill that was there. And the druid brought the waters up to fill his fountains and realized that there was a hint of magic in this. And he continued to work and to embellish and to eventually create a fountain that could cure certain diseases. But over the years, as time passed, the centuries passed, the druid passed on, leaving his garden to just go wild. This garden is in the center of a now sacred forest. Many people believe there is parts of the forest that are sacred, and they don't like to venture into the forest because they don't want to offend anyone, and they know that there are sentient things in the forest. And sentience of this is due to the life springing, the waters from these fountains that the druid created. And over the centuries that have passed, this has become almost impassable. The forest is thick with trees, and the entrance into the forest is very difficult. And then in the heart of the forest is the garden built over the ruins. So the party is challenged with finding the way through the forest to the garden, to enter the garden, and to bring back a flask of this powerful water. Sounds like a simple task, but this is a very different kind of dungeon adventure, because first off, it's not underground. It's all above ground. So the dungeon is overgrown. So there is during the day, there's always a little bit of light. But during the night, of course, it's going to be dark. But the other thing is because the trees have overgrown, the trellises that were there for to support the growing vines and such have actually become semi-impenetrable. It's a lot of work to try and get through anything except the established paths through this. Now, an adventuresome party or a party who's willing to use fire can do this. Of course, that has its own interesting problems. So they've got to come into this garden. I drew up a quick little map, which is what I'm showing there, that an idea of that. Imagine the walls here that you see are actually impenetrable thorn hedges that surround these areas. And you've got the multiple fountains, you've got trees, there may be treants. So let's talk about what kind of creatures would be inhabiting this. And I'll put this list down in the description. So this is in not any particular order, just from my research. You have blights, and you have myconids. You have awakened shrubs and awakened trees, which could be there. You have gas spores. You could actually put a shrieker in here because it's all overgrown and it's not bright. It's not dark, but some of the sunlight filters down through there. So you have that. You have violet fungus. You have a shambling mound. Of course, you can put a treant in here, which is always fun. A brown mold, green slime, yellow mold, black pudding, gray ooze, ochre jelly. These are all things that you could find in this above ground dungeon. It's a garden. You could have things that are there, but there's no gardener. This has gone wild. So certain things are in there. You could have various plants. This would give a very different feel for your kinds of adventures. And I did this was inspired by somebody saying he didn't think he could create an entire adventure out of gardens. And I go, there's that. And actually, this could be multi-leveled. If the trellises are so overgrown, then what would happen is that you could get on the top of the trellises that overcover all the paths, and there could be additional areas up there. Or just like you see in an elven village, you have some very old trees here. Some of them may be hollowed out. Things could be living in them. Things, or maybe not, but they could have hollowed out, and you could have entire areas like through the trees that are there. And then, as I said in the initial idea of the lore that I was established, this is built upon a ruin, so that there's possibly entrances down to the lower dungeons that may remain of what the great warrior created, down into the lower caverns where the water is coming from, the wellspring of the water. So you've got all of this. This is a different kind of feel from many of the adventures that I've done. Actually, this does feel, I created an adventure called Baron Ratham's Keep. Key to Druid's Gate. Sorry, that Key to Druid's Gate was one I actually ran a series of adventures through. And that was a garden, but it was much larger scale than this. But this was a dungeon that you could create that's outdoors. It's all involved in a garden. You could have awakened trees and awakened shrubs. You could have vines and things like that. There are other monsters. These are the ones that I ran into that are in the 5th edition. And various clinging vines and things that would grab your feet, the grasses that were there. This is an interesting type of adventure, and you could have all kinds of woodland creatures, everything from squirrels and moles and gophers to different kinds of birds that would flitter on down through here. You would have insects like bees and wasps that would be in here because they would obviously have to fertilize all the plants, the birds and the bees, shall we say. We have to have some of that in here. And then you have all the different kinds of trees and plants. And you could have everything from a Venus flytrap of a very large style in these kind of adventures. Gives you an idea of how to create a semi-outdoor adventure. because there is daylight, but it's just filtering down. Most of you may have been in an older forest where you have the canopy filters out most of it's not dark, but it's not bright sunlight. There are tiny patches of sunlight that break through, and particularly if the wind blows and the trees move, that the light patterns on the floor change, and this allows interesting things to be going on there. So I'd like to see if any of you created a garden dungeon, a dungeon style adventure above ground based in a garden. What do you think of this? Would you like this? Would you like me to perhaps embellish this and write this up? Would you be interested in running something like that? Would you be interested in playing in something like that? Have you played in an adventure like this? Have you, what have you done? Give me some comments below. Thank you for watching my video. I look forward to learning what you think about this video. Let me know in the comments below. If you like the video, press the thumbs up button. You can subscribe by clicking the link in the lower left. If you are interested, there are links to more content.